someone who will shield him from corruption allegations. A court in Kenya has issued an arrest warrant for a British national accused of murdering a 21-year-old woman in the northern town of Nanyuki, where the British Army has a military base. Prosecutors say Agnes Wanjiru was killed at a lodge more than a decade ago. The BBC's Akisa Wandera.
The judge issued an arrest warrant after the suspect failed to appear at the High Court to answer murder charges. He directed that the identities of the accused and witnesses not be published, citing the need to protect the integrity of the trial. The prosecution added that while some witnesses are based in Britain, they will be made available for hearings in Kenya. The case has raised questions about accountability and justice in relations between Kenya and the UK, given the British Army's long-standing presence in Laikipia County.
Lastly, an Afghan man who killed a police officer in a knife attack in western Germany last year has been sentenced to life in prison. The man, named Suleiman A., carried out the stabbing at a demonstration in Mannheim. The BBC's Bethany Bell.
Suleiman A. used a large hunting knife to attack a speaker and several demonstrators at an event by an anti-Islam group, Pax Europa. He then stabbed a police officer who later died of his injuries. He was convicted of murder, attempted murder and dangerous bodily harm. The court ruled that his crimes were especially grave, which means that early release is virtually ruled out. The case has sparked a debate in Germany about the deportation of foreign criminals.
Recapping on your top story, South Africa's former Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu, has commended the peaceful and orderly conduct of the electoral process in Malawi. This as voting has continued and comes to a close. Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, assuming South Africa needs about $5 million for the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic Games, while Newcastle United have cancelled more than 100 season tickets. We'll tell you why at the bottom of the hour.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 6 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. This is Africa in Business on Channel Africa. So let's take a look at what we've got in store for you today. We'll visit Nigeria, where the country's finance ministry has put a suspension on the 4% free on-board levy that was introduced about a month ago by the Nigeria Customs Service. We'll find out why as we talk to our correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James Mliangon. And a high-level delegation from Lesotho has made its way to Washington, D.C. in a bid to reduce the 15% tariff that the country has meted out on Lesotho. We do know that the textile industry in the country very much dependent on America. So we'll be speaking this afternoon to the CEO of the Private Sector Foundation of Lesotho, Thabo Kesi. And it is Tourism Month in a number of countries this month of September, Eswatini, Zambia and South Africa. That will be our focus today, as in the business of tourism in our SME feature. That and a whole lot more coming up for you on Africa in Business today.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
We begin here this afternoon with the principal managing partner at Tsunga Bamulo International, Arnold Tsunga, has warned that rising debt levels are pushing many African governments into austerity measures, something that South Africans know all too well about. But this does have some serious consequences for basic human rights, including healthcare, education and social protection. He was speaking at the 3rd Annual Activist Symposium held under the theme Navigating Activism in an Anti-Human Rights Era, where representatives from across the continent gathered to address the growing challenges that are facing human rights defenders. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa was there.
Many African countries are grappling with unsustainable debt levels, forcing governments into harsh austerity policies as part of loan conditions from international lenders. These austerity measures, often involving cuts to public spending, healthcare, education, and social welfare. Principal Managing Partner at Tunga Bamulo International, Arnold Tunga, says it has a direct human rights implication.
Yes, I think you're right that the austerity measures at a global level in terms of support for human rights work has really gone down, and it was aggravated by President Trump's decision to disband USAID. But what we were saying and the proposition we are making at this conference is that it is time that African civil society actors, human rights activists, pro-democracy activists stop outsourcing their struggles to donors. I think the struggles for development of Africa, for the Africa we want in terms of the value system, has to be driven by Africans themselves and not wait for third parties, third countries and donors to be the ones who drive our struggles. It is actually one of the reasons why we find ourselves without effective South to South, Africa to Africa solidarity that helps us to push our causes forward. So this conference is very timely for us because it's coming at a time when the multilateral system itself has been severely fragmented and weak to the point that it is unable to resolve any, serious human rights violations, any conflict.
Tarisai Mungunyani, head of mining program, Center for Environmental Rights, shares some practical alternatives that African nations can pursue to balance debt repayment obligations with protecting citizens' rights and ensuring sustainable development.
I think actually what needs to start is if we're going to have development in our countries, if we're going to have mining companies, even from the global north, come and invest in our countries, that, the bedrock of the law is the polluter pays. So as you make profit, as you look into beneficiation for communities, that there is a reciprocal duty to ensure that there is protection of the environment, that there is consideration of climate and climate concerns, and that they do have financial mechanisms that they've put in place to do that. I think if there's a balance in regards to what investments come in, what is the dual obligations of these companies that are coming in to invest, and how the governments and our states manage those relationships.
Meanwhile, Situtugile Mkize from Center for Applied Legal Studies adds that striking this balance will require stronger political will, fairer debt negotiations, and greater accountability from both African governments and international lenders.
So the importance of activism and just human rights defenders is to bring awareness and put a spotlight on issues that are affecting their communities, but also issues that are in the public interest that affect the countries and that affect the continent at large. And one of those biggest challenges at the moment has been what you just mentioned now: austerity measures, funding cuts that we've been experiencing since the beginning of this year. That affects the way people are able to voice out and bring that awareness on issues that are in the public interest. So it's really important. This gathering is really important because we are wanting to highlight and put a spotlight on all of those issues.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It has gone exactly 13 minutes after 4 p.m. as we turn our sights on Nigeria. In the country has ordered the immediate suspension of a levy on all imported goods, which companies had said would raise the cost of doing business and crimp economic recovery efforts. Importers as well as business groups had warned that the 4% free on board or FOB levy, which was introduced by the Nigeria Customs Service last month, would increase first and foremost the cost of goods, fuel inflation, and would also hurt Nigeria's trade competitiveness. this being the last thing that's needed at a time when the country was trying to end currency volatility and sluggish growth. For more on this, we joined on the line by our correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James Ibilamgo. A very good afternoon to you, Jonathan. Good to have you with us. So take us through why this 4% free on board levy was introduced in the first place. Welcome.
Hi, Thami. Good afternoon to you. Basically, many people now, depending on, to answer the question as to why, it will depend on whose side you're looking at it. But I think from my observation, having followed the story and spoken with a few concerned stakeholders over time, over the past 1 year, one of the things that I can say is the nation has been looking at different ways to be able to raise revenues and increase in revenue generation for the government. And the customs has been one of the major parastatals or organs of government that it has tried to do a lot of reforms to make sure that money's coming. For instance, the customs has been fully moved into being under the Ministry of Finance, and we've seen other reforms as regarding automation of its services. And almost every quarter, we see reports that keep saying how the customs is making more money for the nation. For instance, only a few days ago, we saw how some sort of history was made, how in one day, some billions of naira were made by just one of the customs here in Lagos. So it's largely connected to raising finances. However, this is not a new development, though. It goes a little bit way back. The law that is being implemented at the moment goes way back to about 2023, when an act of parliament was enacted to be able to bring about this change. But it couldn't be implemented at the time, as the Customs Controller General said, because they already had an existing contract with a service or some service providers who were working at the ports. So they had to wait to exit that contract. And then in June of last year, the customs started implementing this significant shift. Now, it depends on how you're looking at it. Some have argued that on the surface, it kind of seems as if it is a negligible amount, because what was the charge, or the former regime had something that was called the CISS. And under the CISS, which was a cost structure of importation structure, we had 1% of the cost involved with shipping an item coming to land in Nigerian port being that levy that was being charged. Whereas in this new regime of the FOB, it's having to do with the cost of the things being imported as at the port of import. However, we have gone from 1% to 4%. So simply put, if someone was paying, say, so let's say if you were importing goods worth about $100,000, you would pay about $1,000 as the fee in the old regime. But under the current regime, by the time the calculation is done, you'll be paying something in the region of almost $4,000. And the argument,
and it's quite
by
clear.
different...
And it's quite clear. I mean, that's a huge jump. So
it is a huge difference.
Here's what the finance minister has said, right? He said that the suspension is being put in place in order to allow for comprehensive review of the levies framework as well as its broader economic implications. And I think you've already highlighted major aspects of that. But the big question is, especially because this is nothing really new, why wasn't this analysis done? Why wasn't this comprehensive review done in the first place before instituting the levy and then having to withdraw it?
Now, interestingly, Thami, I think it's a case of the government having learned its lessons and probably not being too proud to go back and start what it ought to have done at the time. Because our reporting way back then showed that several stakeholders, for instance, the Nigerian Manufacturers Association at the time, they cried out saying, look, this levy was going to harm the already fragile economy of the country. We already have very fragile scenarios with our currency. We have fragile scenarios with inflation. Putting that in place was going to harm even the fragile manufacturing sector. But it seemed like their concerns fell on deaf ears, because I remember at the time, the Customs Controller General kept saying it was the law and it needed to be implemented. But what they kept saying was, let us have stakeholder engagement. And that didn't happen. So basically, the finance minister, who is also the coordinating minister of the economy, now says that the suspension he has ordered is to allow for consultation to happen within the larger stakeholder community, so that they can then figure how do they go about this, because it is a law, so it has to be implemented. But how it will be implemented without harming the sector is now the bone of contention.
And has this been discussed on how the government hopes to make up for the revenue shortfall as a result of the suspension? Because the reason it was put in place in the first place is that we understand that this is a move that was part of an effort to boost the non-oil revenues in an atmosphere where there was declining crude output and mounting fiscal pressures. How is that gap then going to be closed?
So we haven't had any more details yet, because this only the statement was only released from the minister's office only yesterday, only late yesterday actually. So we are following that. The engagement is now going to begin. What we are hoping that we're going to see would be rounds of conversations and possibly public fora that would entail these different sectors. For instance, we would have the Manufacturers Association, we'll have the Freight and Forwarders Customs Agents Association. Different people are, because we're a very heavy import dependent economy. One of the things that though I don't think will be of concern majorly, is shortfall in revenues, because judging by President Tinubu's own words, only about a week or a little over a week ago, he said as at that time, the nation has already surpassed its revenue targets for the year. So I think we wouldn't be seeing a situation of falling below the targets. However, with the new opportunities opening for more revenue, it's kind of like we say, the nature of the beast. It just keeps wanting more and wanting more and wanting more. And I'm sure the government is not going to backpedal on the opportunity to make more money.
All right. When does this review start? Do you know?
No, they haven't. So the statement fell short on giving specifics. But what we are hoping to see, as it often happens, is that by today there'll be a lot of people who will be calling at the minister's office. A lot of people will be calling at the Controller General's office. A lot of people who are also involved in helping to campaign, to mobilize and create the opportunities for conversations are going to start. So I do not see the full implementation of the 4% coming back this year. What we should be looking at is a likely scenario of, say, maybe by second quarter of next year.
Jonathan James Liamgong, thank you so much for that comprehensive roundup and progress report on this 4% levy that has now been suspended. You have yourself a splendid afternoon further. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Thami. You
Thank
too.
You. Have a good one. That's Jonathan James Liamgong, bring us to exactly 22 minutes after 4.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Thami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
We turn our sights now on to the economy in Lesotho and what the ministry there is doing to try to turn their fortunes around. A high-level delegation from Lesotho is currently in Washington, D.C. in the United States in a bid to plead for a reduction in the tariffs that are meted out against them. As the country's biggest employer, the textile sector is forced to cut jobs as orders dry up. This follows an increase of 15% in the imports into the United States. Now, the delegation, which is led by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, hopes to get a tariff that is below the current 15%. Meanwhile, there are reports that a march is planned on the offices of Lesotho's Prime Minister, this being tomorrow, to highlight the impact that these tariffs have had on their businesses as well as their livelihoods. To put everything into perspective for us, we joined this afternoon by the CEO of the Private Sector Foundation of Lesotho, Thabo Ngubeni. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, the listeners.
So the Department of Trade and Industry, Thabo, says that they want their talks with the United States to resume on what they call a clean slate. Should they have taken this approach when the US President Donald Trump initially announced the tariffs? Could this be too little too late, do you think?
No, I think it might be too late, but as I see things, technically, the new tariffs have really nullified AGOA. I don't see how AGOA, can be extended because already we are having the tariffs that are subjected to the imports or exports in countries that are exporting to the U.S. market. So even the allies, long-standing allies with U.S., you can talk of Japan, South Korea, they were hit hard, by the tariffs. So, and again, when you look at the trade between U.S. and Africa, and we never exceeded 4%, as compared to other trading partners of U.S., meaning that Africa is, U.S. is having more important partners, trading partners, than us, as Africans. So I don't see how the things going to be changing, with the renewal of AGOA. Chances are very slim, taking into account the current geopolitics.
We've seen a number of countries make their way through to the United States to try and renegotiate these tariffs, South Africa being one of those. We've seen, Canada and Mexico, doing the same. What do you rate as the likelihood of success for Lesotho?
Yeah, South Africa is a typical example. And South Africa was making great concessions that they could buy gas of US, but they couldn't succeed. So even the situation now in Canada and Mexico, we couldn't see much difference, So it shows how hard things are, at present moment. So in the case of Lesotho, I didn't see the position of the ministry as of now, and I don't see how Lesotho can entice US, at this point in time, really. Chances are very slim that we can secure a better deal.
So what does this mean then? What does it mean for the country's economy should this mission not fail as you are putting forward?
Yeah, I think we have to diversify the economy. I think that is the low-hanging fruit that we can explore, especially with agriculture. We have plenty of water. We have arable land, which is not fully utilized. So, with food, you can't go wrong with food. So I think we have to pay more attention to agriculture. Then secondly, yes, we can consider manufacturing and strategize how we can forge links with the countries like Tunisia, which is already exporting to the EU market, learn best practices out of it. At the same time, also forge links for the production with Tunisia to access other African markets, So these are kind of the strategies, that I think we could explore at this point in time.
And it really does seem to be the approach of many countries who also have been adversely affected by the UF tariffs, expanding markets and looking at other possible trade partners. So there are reports, Mr. Tkesi, that there is going to be a march taking place in Lesotho tomorrow to the home or the offices of the Prime Minister. Do you know about this march?
Yes, I was aware about the attempt to have that march, but it looks like they couldn't secure the permit, and the protesters were contemplating to go to court to get a permit. So I'm not aware if ever there's a verdict from the High Court of Lesotho in relation to that. So, yeah, but I know about that attempt of protesting to the office of the Prime Minister.
And what's your view on that? I mean, should the permit be issued, whether it's tomorrow or at a later date? Is this something that you yourself support? Would you be taking part in a march of that nature?
I'm an administrator, so controlled by my executive. So mine is to implement the decision of the executive. So as yet, our executive has not made any deliberation in relation to that.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Mr. Tkesi. I'm sure yourselves and all those in business in Lesotho and even citizens who've been affected are looking very closely at this trip to Washington D.C. In the hope that it will yield good results. We thank you for your time, sir. That's the CEO of the Private Sector Foundation of Lesotho, Thabo Tkesi, bringing us to exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African Time. Let's head over quite speedily to the markets desk where Buntle Hedbush is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Thami. Good afternoon. And our last look at the indicators this afternoon. $1 is trading at 17 Rand 35 in South Africa. In Botswana, it's trading at 13 Pula 18. In Namibia, 17 Namibian dollars 35. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 23 kwacha 67. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 39. In Ethiopia, at 143 birr 69. Uganda, 3,488 shilling. And in Tanzania, it's at 2,446 shilling. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,500 naira this afternoon. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 48 Egyptian pound 11. In Tunisia, it's trading at 2 dinar 89. Algeria, 128 dinar 91. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 8 dirham 89. In Angola, it's trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,802 to the US dollar. And now turning to the commodities this afternoon, gold is trading at $3,693 per ounce and platinum $1,406 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.10 a barrel, slightly higher from earlier on today. And those are your indicators this afternoon. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hedbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And the latest from the world of sport and business, here is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Good afternoon from the sports desk. Now, swimming South Africa President Alan Fritz says the federation requires about $5 million to prepare its athletes for the Los Angeles Olympic Games in 2028, as well as the Brisbane Olympic Games in 2032. Now, speaking to SABC Sport, Fritz explained that the funding will come from SASCOC, the National Lottery, as well as headline sponsors. Bombela Concessions Company have already committed $580,000 in a one-year deal with an option to renew. Now, Swimming South Africa has included 21 swimmers and one open water swimmer in the program, with the possibility of expanding the numbers. Fritz believes that with proper funding, the country's best performing Olympic Federation can deliver results in the upcoming games.
You got to add in there, of course, what SASCOC has in OPEX. You got to add in there what we're supposed to get from DSEC, about 2 to 3 million. In fact, we were supposed to get 4 or 5 million from DSEC. DSEC, our presentation with them when we met with the minister and MECs at MINMEC, we said we require 10 million from them because we knew that Bombela was coming in. The lotto, we're going to also ask for 10 million for this cycle, and that for the next cycle, the same, it would take us closer to the 85 million.
Now, Fritz, a former SASCOC board member, says Swimming South Africa has great talents but lacks the facilities as well as the resources to elevate them to world-class standards. He has appealed for increased government as well as corporate support to help improve training infrastructure.
We are athlete and potential. We are in an extremely healthy state. Most probably one of the best that we've ever been for a very long time. We are not in a healthy state in terms of resources and physical infrastructure. And that's why our plea is for more funding for the athletes so that we can produce the goods that the country wants us to produce.
Onto the story now. Newcastle United have cancelled more than 100 season tickets and apologised to the supporters for an oversight after seats sold to tour organisers a decade ago were not detected until recently. That's, of course, according to the statement released by the club earlier on today. The club have now taken action following a further investigation into the unauthorised reselling of tickets for matches at St. James Park. It comes in the wake of a school nearly 200 miles away being able to buy tickets for the massively in-demand Champions League home game against Barcelona on Thursday night. The club also explained that when the new owners took over about 4 years ago, they ended agreements with the third parties that allowed them to sell tickets. That included a deal agreed a decade ago with a small group of tour organisers for the benefit of the school groups, but the club did not realise they were still selling tickets because there were no formal deal with the organisers. So at the same time, a spokesperson for the school said they purchased them in good faith after being approached by a provider, but the tickets were subsequently cancelled by the club. Newcastle United have now terminated a total of 103 season tickets in recent days for breaching terms and conditions. The club also says the latest situation does not relate to individual supporters reselling their tickets for St. James Park. In this instant, the tour organisers bought the season tickets in the 2015-2016 campaign. So United also stressed that the continued use as well as the unauthorised resale of season tickets at a higher package price was not discovered because there was no formal contract in place for the tour groups. Well, that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It has gone exactly 4:37 Central African Time. Now, there are mixed reactions on the appointment of a service provider to develop a funding model for the SABC. Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Solly Malatsi announced that he has appointed a private company called BMIT Knowledge Group to develop a funding model for the public broadcaster. Some of the political parties represented in Parliament and non-governmental organisations have expressed different sentiments on this development. Malatsi took what was criticised by some after he withdrew the SABC bill, citing the failure to provide a proper funding model for the public broadcaster. Abongwe Kobokana reports.
The ACDP says it supports any possible financial rejuvenation of the SABC. ACDP Deputy Leader Wayne Tring says it is long overdue.
It is under these circumstances that the ACDP would support the appointment of a private company to develop a new funding model for the SABC. Additionally, we support the withdrawal of the SABC bill and call for the fast-tracking of a bill that is commensurate with the times and needs of the broadcaster.
The SOS Support Public Broadcasting Coalition has welcomed the appointment of a private service provider, even though it says it is concerned that such work is done by an external entity. Oyanda Siotula is the national coordinator.
So we're really looking forward to seeing the funding model. We're very eager to see what revenue streams are going to be proposed, especially in terms of innovative approaches to monetize the SABC's digital platforms and various offerings that the SABC has. Which are also increasingly, being profitable for other broadcasters in the online space. We also hope to see concrete proposals on the direct public funding. We continue to believe that it is essential that, the SABC as a public institution is funded through the fiscus.
The founder of the Activists and Citizens Forum, Dennis Bloom, says he is against this decision.
The decision by the Minister of Communications, Solly Malatsi, to appoint a private company to develop a funding model for the SABC must be condemned and rejected. The SABC will never be privatized by anybody. Activists and Citizens Forum call a Minister of Communications, Solly Malatsi, to immediately withdraw the appointment of this private company.
DAMP Tsolofelo Podlani, who is serving on the Communications Committee, says this is a step in the right direction.
The DA welcomes the new developments regarding the SABC bill. The decision by Minister Malatsi to appoint a service provider to develop the SABC funding model takes the process forward. The SABC bill has not been amended in over 20 years. Malatsi has moved in just over a year in office, showing his commitment to rescuing the SABC. As the Democratic Alliance, will hold the minister to the timelines which are yet to be communicated by the department. We remain committed to ensuring the finalization and the completion of the SABC bill that will stabilize the finances and the governance of the SABC as soon as possible.
Request to get a comment from the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications, Kusela Diko, yielded no positive results at the time of broadcast. Abongwe Kobokane, SABC News at Parliament.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Welcome to our SME feature on this day. We're focusing on Tourism Month. September is Tourism Month in a number of Southern African countries. I'm talking Eswatini, Zambia, as well as South Africa. It's a month that serves to promote domestic tourism, also showcases the diverse attractions that the various countries have to offer, and encouraging people to travel within and to the various countries. As travellers are encouraged to visit this said country, how can the tourism sector contribute to job creation and economic growth, especially for young people who particularly live in areas where there are less and even fewer opportunities available for them? That's the question that we're asking this afternoon as we host Boiti Lilwa, founder and director of Back of the Moon Guest House. And Boiti is our guest today for our SME feature. A very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on African Business. Welcome.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
No, first and foremost, can you tell us more about your guest house and why you decided to call it Back of the Moon? Where is it located?
Okay. First and foremost, can I just correct the name there? My name is Bontle Lihula. I'm the founder of... Yes.
Thank you, Bontle.
Back of the Moon Enterprises. So I decided to call my company Back of the Moon because I was thinking of, I want to really want to know what is happening in the whole world. And the only thing that I could think of was, I cannot touch the moon, but I really like the moon. So I want to see what is behind the moon. That is where the name was derived from. So eventually, Back of the Moon Enterprises gave birth to Back of the Moon Guest House, which was founded in 2019.
And how's business going so far? How do you manage to attract those visitors who are curious about Back of the Moon?
Okay, the business is going well, and what we are doing is we are doing diverse marketing of our guest house. If you go online, you will find us in most of the booking sites like booking.com, Accommodation South Africa, and we also on TikTok. We also on Instagram, Facebook, and also when you check us on YouTube, you will find us there. So we have really done a lot of marketing, and that is how people are finding us. So the business is doing well in that way because we've been operating at around 90 to 100% occupancy rate.
That's quite phenomenal, especially considering that accommodation and hotel or leisure accommodation is a very competitive sector. And I wonder how you've managed to recover after COVID. We know it literally died in COVID because people were not traveling, people were not doing anything at all. How did you cope during that time, and what did it take for you to resuscitate yourself back to this 90 to 100% occupancy?
What we did was we knew that people were like a modern facility, so we renovated the guest house in 2022 and modernized it with new amenities. So that the people of this generation will like it. So when you come to Back of the Moon, you will find that haven of tranquility with cool tones, and that is what most of our guests are always telling us, that they didn't know that such a guest house existed in the Kalahari because they were thinking of something else. But when they get in here, they found out that we have really taken pains to make sure that our guest house is really modernized, and that is.
And being located in the Kalahari, for those who are outside of South Africa, how would you describe your area? What is the Kalahari?
The Kalahari area is very dry and very, we are more like in a desert. So when people come this side, they are met with a very hot area. So we need to make sure that we make them very comfortable. That is why the guest houses around here, our guest houses have got aircons, so that when people are here during summer, they don't feel that heat, and during winter they are not getting cold. So you need to be thinking around that area when you put an establishment like this in place because of the dryness of the area.
And if you look at the profile of your guests, Buntle, who are they, and who are the people that actually travel to, as you say, the desert?
The people that normally travels to or let me say 90% of our guests are people that are on business, people that are coming over here because in our area, our area is called John Taula Haitseo, so we are in a mining area. So most of the people that are conducting business the site are staying in Johannesburg, so they travel to us for business purposes. So they will come here maybe on Monday and go home on Fridays. So I get those people that are also from the government departments, mostly people that are also touring, going to places like Kalahari Transportier, Tswalu Lodge. As they are passing, they book through booking.com and then overnight here and go there the following day.
And what are profit margins like for a business such as yours?
The profit margin for a business as mine, the last time when I checked it this month, I saw that at least we're doing so well, like it has really exceeded what we were thinking is we were looking at 30 to 40%, but now we are operating at 57, 60% of the gross profit. So we are really doing well in this regard. So we also doubled the revenue from 2022 to 2025. As the business was growing, and we even managed to add more rooms, because in 2023 we started adding 6 rooms and we have completed them. So the business is doing well. It's a competitive business, but if you are focused, you can really go far with the business. We are even now thinking of opening another branch.
Wow, that's awesome news. So a lot of good news and great stories that you're sharing with us, but what are the challenges that you've encountered along the ways in operating this business?
The most challenge that we were encountering, it was during the time of load shedding. We were really struggling that time because, like I've already said to you, our area is very arid, is very dry. So you must just imagine in a hot area and then you don't have an aircon. You need to be relying on solar system and whatever. And that needs money from your pocket also, because you need to be putting in place solar. You need to be making sure that you are having a generator. So we were struggling in that regard. Of load shedding. But since there was no load shedding, really, I will say the only challenges that we are having right now is challenge of overbooking, because demand. So people really want to use our place. So most of the time I will be turning guests away to say I'm full, and I'm running a risk of losing them forever.
Look, in the gamut of the type of problems that one can have when running a business, I think this is one that many would choose for themselves, Buntle. We wish you continued success. Overflow, it's where you're at. May it stay that way. And good luck with your second branch as well.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. You have yourself a great one. That's Buntle Leholwa. She is the owner of Back of the Moon Guest House out in the Kalahari. Great problem to have. Overbooking, having to turn people away because you don't have enough room. Therefore, she's looking at expanding and opening up another branch. Absolutely amazing news. That's our SMA feature for today. Takes us to exactly 10 minutes to 5 p.m.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Thulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Thulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
So in our feature this week with Standard Bank, we're going to be taking a look at the Johannesburg leg of the Organics and Natural Products Expo Africa. It takes place later this week from Thursday the 19th all the way throughout the weekend to Saturday the 20th at the Sandton Convention Centre in South Africa. This event follows on the success of the first leg, which took place earlier this year in the mother city, Cape Town. The expo serves as a vital platform, and its aim is to connect businesses with consumers, retailers, and potential export partners, thus creating channels for business development as well as market expansion. Standard Bank has been actively supporting businesses across the organic product spectrum, including companies like Hela Organics, which specializes in premium organic skincare. Head of Small Business Enterprises for Standard Bank, Dinesh Pillay, joins us this afternoon. Good to have you with us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Thami, and good afternoon to the listeners. Thanks for having me.
So tell us more about the Organic and Natural Products Expo and why it is so significant for South African businesses.
So, Thami, I think it's a very key question, knowing what we know in terms of small business. what it drives in the economy, and not just in South Africa, but across the continent and the rest of the world. Really, this expo just helps us to say, how do we further drive the growth of small business? And as you mentioned, we had the first iteration of this event in Cape Town, or this expo in Cape Town. And this serves as a critical platform for connecting local entrepreneurs with consumers, retailers, and potential export partners. But South Africa's organic market projected to grow greater than 13% between 2024 and 2029. This expo creates vital channels for business development and market expansion. It's more than an event, it's an ecosystem where innovative businesses can showcase their potential and explore new opportunities.
Out of all the businesses that Standard Bank would be focusing on when it comes to small businesses and small enterprises, why the organic and natural products market?
Yeah, I think the organics market and organic products market in that context, is that we really want to help in terms of making sure that these are unique businesses, that we cater and support all these businesses across various aspects, sectors, industries. But this in particular shows the growth, as I mentioned, and that really we want to make sure that we are actively supporting business across the organics product spectrum, from premium organic skincare to ethically sourced natural snacks. Our approach goes beyond traditional banking. We provide human-led, digitally enabled relationships management that understands the unique needs of organic and natural product businesses. So really it is to focus and to harness this relationship and to make sure we can help to have sustainable businesses grow in this space.
And what is it that makes South African organic products and that sector unique?
So South Africa has distinct advantages in the global organic market. Our country's biodiversity, complementary growing seasons, and the emerging reputation for quality standards positions us uniquely. The sector have exciting export opportunities, particularly in the American and Chinese markets. What's particularly exciting is the diversity of business models, from farm to table organic food, producers to innovative natural cosmetic manufacturers.
And as far as the attendees are concerned, who is expected to attend and what can they expect at the expo?
Well, Expo is taking place, as you mentioned, from the 18th to the 20th of September in Johannesburg at the Sandton Convention Center. It will feature exhibitors across multiple categories, including food and beverage, beauty and personal care, health and wellness, and sustainable lifestyle products. It's an opportunity for businesses to showcase innovation, connect with potential partners, and explore market expansion strategies.
And as far as advice for entrepreneurs who want to enter this space?
Well, the advice is like for any business, but in particular for this space, be prepared to innovate, understand your unique value proposition, and seek partners who truly understand your business model. The organic and natural product sector is about more than just product. It's about creating sustainable value chains that benefit entire communities.
And I wonder, as I let you go, it's great you've spoken about the growth potential in the industry, what it is that makes the South African organic sector unique. But I wonder, what are the challenges that entrepreneurs need to keep in the back of their minds as they enter in the sector or want to grow in organic products?
Thanks, Thami. I think for me, if I can quote Akona Mdawe, founder of Zenith Africa, highlights a critical insight. The organics product sector, and if I can quote, open quote, the organic product sector requires specialized knowledge and often different financing approaches compared to conventional businesses. Close quote. This is where targeted financial support becomes crucial. These businesses need partners who understand the unique ecosystem, balancing environmental responsibility, innovative product development, and sustainable business practices. These are just but some of the challenges that we need to partner and assist in growing.
Well, Dinesh Pillay, wishing you all the best from the 18th to the 20th. I'm sure the Organics and Natural Products Expo Africa, taking place at the Sandton Convention Center, is going to be a delight for all you natural enthusiasts and those who are interested in finding out more about their products. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Thami.
Thank you. That's Dinesh Pillay. He is the head of small business enterprises for business and commercial banking at Standard Bank. He brings us to exactly 4:58 Central African time. Well, that is how we round up our Tuesday edition of Africa in Business, just remembering some of the key stories that we looked at today. Nigeria suspending and pausing that 4% levy that was put in place by the Nigeria Customs Service, and the Ministry of Finance saying that they need to do a more in-depth report. We spoke to our reporter Jonathan James Liamgong on the ground, and no indication as yet as to when this review is going to take place. But how is the country going to make up for that gap, that levy gap, which was supposed to be filled by this levy? And also we took a look at Lesotho, an entire delegation making its way to Washington DC, hoping to negotiate better tariffs below the 15% that Donald Trump has given to the country. We spoke to Thabo Ngubeni. He is the CEO of the Private Sector Foundation of Lesotho. He wasn't very optimistic about the outcome of that meeting, saying those who came before them, we know that other countries have been trying to do the same, have not yielded any good results. But also a march to the Prime Minister's office on hold because a permit for that was not issued. Well, that's how we come to the end of it for this afternoon. This has been Africa in Business. Thank you to our team, Onele Nzinze, Buntle Headbush, Musibudi Makura, Mabu Buloka Ntando, Lutuli, Talent Butelezi, and Sfiso Hlope. I'm Thami Ngubeni for Africa in Business. Have yourself a splendid one further.